Chris Carter here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Joined by Ray Fittipaldo, we're going to talk about what we saw in the first day in pads at Steelers training camp and whether or not the offense is really making progress. That and a lot more here in the North Shore Drive podcast. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here joined by one of our great Steelers beat reporters, Ray Fittipaldo. And as always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as the daily content that comes out from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and all of our sports writers, including all the trade deadline updates on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Get all of that from our baseball guys who've been talking about it relentlessly. And as always, this show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you go to Mike's Beer Bar, they have over 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are from the local Pittsburgh area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap, and they're always switching new ones in and out. It's an amazing place to be. We'll talk more about them later. Ray, it was an amazing place to be on Tuesday as well, where we got to see some hitting and some pads and some live football, which has been a while since we've seen that. And so I've seen that, and I think that there's some interesting points there to touch on. But I think one of the notes that we have seen from the Steelers so far is that the offense was able to win 7 shots. The offensive line seemed to be able to get a push in the run game. Do you feel like you're seeing progress in where the offense is at this time of the year?
I do, and I think the reason that there were some hiccups in the first week, Chris, was, Russell Wilson didn't practice. And listen, Russell Wilson didn't practice a lot on Monday either, but, he was out there a little bit. I think he's going to be back soon. I think what you're seeing now is the maturation of Justin Fields getting a little bit more comfortable. I thought Tuesday was his best day. I thought he was good in the running packages that they had designed for him, and he was good throwing the football too. And I think the physicality of the offensive line when they ran the ball, especially in 7 shots, was something that you could maybe hang your hat on as an offense. So, yeah, when the defense is winning drills and they're whooping it up, and the offense is young, and you're saying, okay, I get it. They need time to come along. I thought what happened on Tuesday finally says, okay, maybe they're almost on equal footing, and maybe they can start taking some steps in their development.
I hear you on that. I think that's the thing, is that they still have a lot of work to do. This is not a done deal by any sort to say that they see them winning, but it's always good to see positives early in the season. Granted, we saw positives last season. The preseason, the offense looked unstoppable. Kenny Pickett seemed like he was going to be on fire, and then we saw how last season played out. So there's still a lot to play out so far. But I think there's a lot that's going on when it comes to how we saw both Justin Fields and Russell Wilson look. I thought this was the best we've seen of Justin Fields. He even talked about it after practice, saying that it's been about getting into a groove. He's been working on his mechanics. Russell Wilson talking about how he's been ready. I thought Justin Fields looked good, but I also thought Russell Wilson looked like he hadn't missed, like he's been here for all 13 years he's been in the league, because I don't think he missed a pass that I watched, Ray.
Yeah, he only took 2 reps in 11-on-11 drills, both handoffs. But when he went, 7-on-7 against the secondary, he was 8 for 8, and he had a nice deep ball to Connor Hayward that drew a big reaction from the crowd. So, slowly but surely they're working him back into the fold. I think every practice you'll see him do a little bit more, Chris. So, I know a lot of fans are going to go out to Latrobe Memorial Stadium on Friday night. I guess there's a chance that Russ will be a full participant by then. But, in the meantime, Justin Fields is going to continue to get reps, I think, from his perspective. And really from the team's perspective, that's a great thing. He's the backup quarterback. You never know when he might have to go in this season. So it's great that he's getting these extended reps in the early stages of camp. Obviously not great for Russ, but in the situation the Steelers are in, whole new quarterback room. Justin is trying to take advantage of these reps as much as he can.
I think that's the thing, is that taking advantage of these opportunities. That's what Mike Tomlin always talks about, and it's important. And you and I talked about on the Monday episode about what it would be like to see Russell Wilson be in be back and be able to practice, and what it would be. It was clear that they still gave Justin Fields a chance to kind of show himself out. He led the first team in 7 shots. He led the first team in 11 on 11. And then eventually Russell Wilson came in on 7 on 7 and was getting kind of into the groove there. But, I got to ask both of the quarterbacks after practice how they felt about their progress in Arthur Smith's offense. And they both kind of talked about a confidence, but also like a diligence that they need to keep learning it, to keep getting better, to keep getting sharper. And I thought that was a good sign to hear that from both of them in the way that they talked about it. By the way, you can watch both of those clips on the Post-Gazette podcast network, and on YouTube we have those full scrums up where both of them talk to us in the media. But I think that those are really good signs. And the Steelers, of all the things the Steelers need to click on offense, then there's several things. They still need to figure out a wide receiver too. Roman Wilson went down with an injury. We still don't know any updates, so that's why we're not talking too much about that. But if the Steelers are if the Steelers, even if the Steelers get a wide receiver too, even if the offensive line completely comes together, this team still needs quarterback play that's been significantly better than, dare I say, back to 2018. Ben Roethlisberger is the last time that maybe they had a complete season of, effective quarterback play here, Ray. So I think it's very important to see positivity from either one of these guys, and especially both of them.
I agree. And, I know you were in on the Russell Wilson interview as well, but he says all the right things. He was talking about Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren spending time with him at night on the practice field, just walking through some things. We know that he and Connor Hayward and some of the other receivers spend time between minicamp and training camp, just throwing in California, I think, getting that chemistry down. So, he's putting himself in a position where he can, take hold of the Steelers offense. Of course, it has to click with Arthur Smith. They got to put him in the right situations. But, just based on the interaction I've had with Wilson and, him telling us what he's done to, try to prepare for the season, I think there's a lot of hope within that building that this offense can be much better than it has been, like you said, for the past 5 years or so. So we know in today's NFL, you got to score points, Chris. It's tough to do what the Steelers have done for the last 5 years, right? Be in contention or on the brink of contention, trying to win 17-13 every single week. It's hard. If Arthur Smith can manufacture more points, I think that'll put the Steelers in better position to win games and hopefully for their sake in better position when it comes to the playoff race.
Absolutely. We talked about it being the first day in pads. Let's talk about what we saw in that. Of course, that means backs on backers. That means lineman versus lineman. We got a chance to see a lot of that kind of action on Tuesday. We'll go over some of the things we saw, notes that we took about a lot of different players. We'll get into all that next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you go to Mike's Beer Bar there, they have over 500 different available beers, 300 of those beers from the local Pittsburgh area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap. It is a great place to be. You can go there before, during, after Pirates games, or just on a night out in the town. It's on the North Shore, right across the street from PNC Park, so you can sit outside where you can get a view of the downtown skyline and the Clementi Bridge, or you can sit inside and enjoy one of their 20 different televisions that have stuff going on all the time. They're always on sports, especially with the Olympics going on. It's an amazing place to be, and they also have amazing food like Steak on a Stone, where you get your choice cut of steak brought to you on a heated stone. Every time you cut off a piece of that steak, press it into the stone, and you choose how well done you want every single bite. It's Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. Go there today, and when you get there, tell them Chris sent you. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Let's get into what we saw a bit in in the first day in pads. Now that included backs on backers. Now backs on backers, of course, is a drill where it's not just they're trying to tackle each other or anything like that, but it is when when you go in and you watch them play, it's basically like both sides are trying to protect, or the offensive side is trying to protect the quarterback, and the defensive side is trying to get past them to get to the quarterback. So if it's a tight end versus an edge rusher, they're lining up in their respective spots, and there's a person who simulates the quarterback as the tight end tries to protect that spot. The same thing for a running back. They kind of line up where a running back would, and the linebacker blitzes. The running back tries to pick up the linebacker and stop them from getting to the person that's playing the quarterback. So we got to see a bunch of that on Tuesday, and I thought that there were some interesting results there overall. But especially when we got to see some of the lead running backs on the team, this was another place where the Steelers offense looked really good. Najee Harris, I thought, dominated the drill. He went up twice against Landon Roberts, I forget the poor soul who he went up against last year, but he literally ended someone's career in backs on backers. Like the guy he hit, he ran him over, and then that guy retired shortly after that. But Harris swept him the first two times they went up against each other. And then, there's some people that think that they split the second one. I think they split the second set of two, but Harris still won at least 3 out of the 4 they matched up with. And then Jaylen Warren also looked really good, and looked really good against Patrick Queen, one of the bigger guys that was added in free agency here. Ray, what was your read on how the running backs were able to win backs on backers?
Yeah, Chris, and I thought it was interesting that Najee Harris did this drill as a rookie. I don't think he's done it the last 2 years, or if he has, it's been very limited, maybe 1 rep one of those years. So he was really good. You talked about him against Roberts. Jaylen Warren has been a standout in this drill ever since his rookie season as well. People think of him, 5'8", 200 pounds. He's going to get bull rushed. No, he doesn't get bull rushed. I'll give Peyton Wilson credit. Peyton Wilson beat him clean with a really nice athletic move at the very end of the drill. Tomlin gave them a rematch. Peyton Wilson said, okay, I'm going to try to bull rush him this time. Give a little change up, right? No. He stood up, Peyton Wilson, and actually put him on the ground. So really good matchup with all those guys. That's what Mike Tomlin calls good on good, starters on starters. I know Wilson's not a starter yet, but I think he's going to be a big part of that defense. So you're right. Those running backs really showed out today as well. I thought Darnell Washington against Nick Herbig was really impressive. You think back to Nick Herbig, and that's kind of how he got on the radar last year, right? Like in those types of drills and one-on-one pass rush drills. And, Washington he's a humongous man. He kind of eats up a smaller guy like Herbig, but he really controlled him. So good day all around for the offense in backs on backers. I thought those 3 players in particular were the stars of that show.
Yeah, I thought that they all had really good showings, and I was impressed too by Jaylen Warren when he stood up to Peyton Wilson. And Peyton Wilson is a big guy. He's 6'2", 6'3". He's fast, he's strong, and in the way that Jaylen Warren hit him, it ended up being a stalemate. But a stalemate when you're private protecting is a win for the offense. Yeah. And immediately you saw them getting each other's faces and kind of talking trash, and that kind of fire is I think really appreciated when from Mike Tomlin and the guys, as long as it stays safe and stops from getting into an extra fight. But I thought that was really good. And you brought up Darnell Washington. I thought he looked phenomenal in pass protection. Sometimes there's people that say, shouldn't he be an offensive tackle? In this drill, he looked like he was an offensive tackle because he was just mugging guys. But I'll also say he made a couple nice plays in the passing game today when he was given a chance there. Other notes I had here, Washington also had a back and forth with Alex Highsmith early on. I thought that was interesting to see. I also thought in general, Mike Tomlin at one point called out the outside linebackers for not winning enough against the tight ends. And you don't see that in Pittsburgh too often in these drills. Especially with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Granted, TJ Watt wasn't part of backs on backers, and Alex Highsmith only went twice. So it was really Nick Herbig and a bunch of backups. Yeah. But it was interesting to see them kind of get called out and the tight ends being the winners of the day.
Yeah, it makes you kind of think, right? Are they going to make a move there? You got three really good players, I think, in Watt Highsmith and Herbig, but there's not a lot behind them. So, they had that fourth guy last season. They don't have that fourth guy now. Marcus Golden isn't in camp just yet. Maybe he will be, soon enough. But I think when you're looking at depth, everyone talks about receiver and slot corner, but kind of sneaky lack of depth outside linebacker beyond those top three guys.
Yeah, I think that's one thing they're looking at there. I think they had Jeremiah Moon go in there, and Jeremiah Moon actually had a rep where he beat Najee Harris, which rarely happens in this drill. Najee Harris is also as good as Jaylen Warren is. Najee Harris. I think the thing is that when Najee Harris wins, it's like, okay, he's supposed to win. He's the size of the kind of running back. When Jaylen Warren wins, you're like, it's ridiculous that a 5'8" guy is just stoning linebackers that got like 4 or 5 inches on him and probably 30 pounds as well. But not when Jeremiah Moon got him, now Harris got his get back against him. I think that's a guy who's fighting for a spot there, as is like a guy like David Prowlis. There's interesting competition there. But to your point, the Steelers might need depth at that position. I think they do need depth at that position. Maybe they could use a phone call to say Marcus Golden, a guy who is still a free agent and was pretty decent for them coming off the bench last year. But, older guy like Marcus Golden, he doesn't need training camp as much. He just needs to make sure that he's in football shape and get back there. Ray, I want to talk to you about what you saw with the offensive lineman and defensive lineman when they squared off, because those are also the really important guys to note here. As much as backs on backers is probably the most exciting because they're working in more space and there's fun there. This is where the linemen finally get to show, hey, all the technique I've been working on, all the weights I've been lifting. This is where we get to show it, and this is where the Steelers expect to be making a lot of their hay this year. We'll get into what happened there next on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But first, I want to remind you that this show is also brought to you by Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. They're your mesothelioma and asbestos lawyers with over 85 years of experience. Call them now for a free consultation. That's Savinas, Kane, and Gallucci. We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, let's talk about what we saw with the linemen. And I think all eyes on the linemen were on the rookies, Zach Frazier and Troy Fautanu. What did you see from Troy Fautanu? We got to see a quick glimpse of him on Sunday without the pads, go up against TJ Watt and look pretty solid. And apparently TJ Watt got to get a couple rematches in. What did you see when that happened there?
Yeah, I thought it was a good go. Fautanu was beaten on the first rep. TJ Watt, he rarely does a spin move, Chris, but he did a spin move, against Fautanu, got inside of him and won that first rep. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, the old vet's going to have his way with the rookie. Very next rep, Fautanu, Watt presents his chest to Fautanu. Fautanu punches him and just stands him up right there. So it's 1-to-1. And on the third rep, it was more of a, Fautanu just neutralizing him. TJ couldn't get to the quarterback. So when you could shut down a guy like TJ Watt 2 out of 3 times, and you're a rookie, you're doing something right. And Troy Fautanu continues to impress me. I think we're going to continue to see his maturation. I think he's on the come, and I think you're going to see what he can do here with these padded practices. This is where he really makes his money.
I think that this is really important to see that kind of stuff. It's that kind of stuff that I think can change the narrative of who starts where at the tackle position, because if he's able to take on starters in the defense and hold his own, and then he does that, if he does that, then I think that's a really good sign for where he is right now. What did you see out of Zach Frazier and how he performed when he finally got out there? Because that's an even harder position to observe when the pads aren't on. And so this was kind of all what he was about.
Yeah. So Frazier is running with the second team, of course. So he went up against second team nose tackle Montravius Adams, and I thought Frazier won both reps. Adams didn't get to the quarterback at all. On one of them, he got really stonewalled by Frazier. So good reps there by Frazier. I think what we all want to see, Chris, because we all know eventually Zach Frazier is going to be the starter. Let's see him against Keanu Benton. That's what I want to see next time they do one-on-ones. Benton, of course, is the guy in the defense that the coaches are pointing to have a breakout season. Let's see him against Frazier, and then I think we'll have a better opinion of where Frazier is right now. But he certainly handled his business against Adams.
Okay. What did you see out of maybe the defensive line side of things, Benton, Leal, or other guys like that? The younger defensive linemen. I think everyone knows about Cam Hayward and guys like that.
Benton had 2 pretty good reps against Nate Herbig, who's running with the ones at center now. Kind of stalemates. They both held their own there. I was really disappointed in the 3 reps I saw against with DeMarvin Leal. We all talked about how he's lost some weight. He potentially could be one of the defensive linemen that has a better season here this year. But he was going up against a younger offensive lineman. I forget exactly who it was. Definitely a backup. And he didn't win any of the 3 reps. And I could argue he definitely lost 2, and I could argue he lost all 3. So, there's something there that certainly bears watching. But, Leal has to step it up. I know he looks different. I know he says it's going to be different this year. But just based on that, Joe, that wasn't a good start to the padded practices for DeMarvin Leal.
And that's certainly a big issue because the big thing he even acknowledged was he needed to be better in the run game and against the run. And if you're not winning your one-on-ones in camp, that's not a good sign you're going to be able to be there. And sure, it looks like he's lost weight. He's in better shape. No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Spencer Anderson. I'm sorry.
It was Spencer Anderson.
It was Spencer Anderson who did a really good job against him. He's running with the 2s at guard, and he did a great job against DeMarvin Leal.
Well, then again, Spencer Anderson, he's trying to make the team. He's trying to show that he can be that versatile weapon on the offensive line. DeMarvin Leal is trying to prove that he's not a healthy scratch guy this year. And again, before the pads went on, I thought I saw good things. I saw encouraging things, but I said hey, you need to see it when the pads do go on, and apparently it was not there. And so, and again, there's more time. They're going to be back in pads for Friday Night Lights this Friday, which we will all be at, and we'll be able to report on and give you more updates there. But again, it's just kind of needing to seize every opportunity that you can when you're in a place like DeMarvin Leal, like you talked about. I think for the Monday show, there's certain guys who it is time to prove it. You're running out of time to make your case to be on this roster for more than just your rookie contract. And Leal's in that category. Were there any other lineman matchups that really caught your eye? I think Sayamalo ended up going up against Cam Hayward a couple times.
Yeah, I think just 1 or 2 reps, kind of a stalemate there between those 2 veterans. I do want to mention Mason McCormick. 2 reps against Isaiah Loudermilk. McCormick, of course, is the 3rd offensive lineman drafted this year. Sometimes I think he's an afterthought, but he was a 4th-round pick. And he went up against Loudermilk twice, and I thought, he did very well. Won both reps fairly cleanly. And, Loudermilk's a guy who was in the rotation at the end of the season over Leal. So he's a guy with some NFL chops. And, I thought also a good first showing there by Mason McCormick. We all know, we're going to talk numbers all day about the offensive line and Spencer Anderson. Can he make it? And Nate Herbig, once Frazier starts, is he going to make it? There's going to be a lot of competition on that offensive line. And I thought Spencer Anderson and Mason McCormick both had good days today.
I think that those are good signs from young offensive linemen. This team needs young offensive linemen from everywhere. But hey, Spencer Anderson, Mason McCormick. One thing that's going to come of this physical offensive line play, Ray, is there's going to be a need to have backups ready to go. This isn't just – it's not just about finding starters. And I think sometimes Steelers fans get spoiled by how what was it? Mason Cole would just keep playing. Mason Cole didn't miss no games, and that was huge for the Steelers. But he also was coming in on walking boots during the week, and he would be obviously banged up, but find a way to play. That's not going to happen all the time, and there's going to be times where you need backups to step up. So having a guy like Spencer Anderson, if whoever wins center between Herbig and Frazier, if the other one's ready, but also having Mason McCormick, who you and I talked about when they drafted him. That could be the replacement for James Daniels after his contract's up, which we know that they're not renewing it right now. if he could step in and be a future guard along with these guys, that could very well go to creating a long-time core that for this offensive line, which can go a lot towards this group coming together and being a real force for the next 5 to 8 years.
Yeah, Chris, very rarely do you carry 3 guards on your 53-man roster as backups. But, Anderson, Herbig, and McCormick, we all know they're going to keep McCormick.
Right.
I think that's a no-brainer. The issue might be, and this is looking way down the road, and we'll have plenty of time to do these 53-man roster breakdowns in a couple of weeks after the preseason games, but Spencer Anderson could also play tackle. And if he could be your swing tackle too, do you really need Dan Moore if Fautanu wins that starting job? I mean, these are all things that, we're going to have to consider here, but offensive line depth is not going to be a problem this year. I think, based on what they've done in the draft the last 2 years, they're setting themselves up to be, very competent both with their starters and their backups.
Absolutely. We'll have more from you from Steelers training camp tomorrow. They resume practice this Wednesday as they continue their week of practice here when they're at St. Vincent College. I won't be there on Wednesday. I will be at Pitt training camp where they're getting their media day on as they're getting things started this week as well. But you can listen to and follow all of that here on the North Shore Drive podcast and all of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette podcasts here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's YouTube page, as well as all of your podcasting apps by searching Post-Gazette Sports. Thank you, Ray, for joining me here, and thank you all for joining us here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Remember to subscribe to this show to get all your Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast and all the daily content that comes out from all of our Pittsburgh sports podcasts here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We'll see you again Friday here on the show. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.